Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar, Understanding Online Education, Everything Parents Need to Know About Online Schooling. Welcome. I hope you're relaxed. I hope you've got your glass of wine, your cup of coffee, pen and paper. It's great to have you here. My name is Nicky B. I'm a radio producer and presenter for 25 years. And I'm also an educator. I've got more than 30 years of teaching experience, both at schools and online, formally and informally. And I'm also a parent of a son, a teenage son, who's been studying online. He's been doing his schooling online for the last more than 3 years now. Actually, my story goes back to the opportunity I was given to go and live in Paris for 6 months, which was the reason why I started my son schooling online. And it was before COVID happened. So by the time COVID came, he was like ready to roll. He was right into it. I've seen the challenges, but mostly I've seen the value of having a child that is schooling online. So it really is my pleasure to be part of tonight's online event and to share some of my experiences, as will the other panelists. We have 3 amazing panelists, and I'm very excited to introduce them to you. But first, I want to look at what is coming up and what we will be addressing. As we all know, there have been changes in technology. More and more information is available to be accessed online. And then, of course, COVID came along and completely affected every child's schooling, whether they were at college, university, grade 1, grade 12, it didn't matter. COVID really affected the way that we look at education. And I think, personally, I definitely think that the future of education is going to be more and more online. When I enrolled my child in online schooling, I enrolled him in the international Cambridge curriculum. And I found there's quite a lot online with the Cambridge system, as well as with the American GED system. But there isn't that much with regards to CAPS, and I think that's where we come in. So tonight we're going to be covering how online schools work, the administration and the teaching approaches that are offered, the curriculum. For example, if your child is currently doing CAPS, the curriculum itself won't change, but maybe the way that it's presented will change. We'd welcome personal experiences. We're going to have some from our panelists, and we'd welcome yours as well. And please make note there is an icon at the bottom of the page, a question and answer icon. And we'd welcome your questions as the panelists are talking, as the webinar is going ahead. Please post your questions there. We can address them at the end and the question and answer section. We're going to also be looking at the impact of COVID on education, not only on the learning of our children, but also on their social life, which is a really important aspect. And of course, the regulatory requirements. And don't worry, it's not as heavy as it seems. It's actually quite simple, and that will be covered during this webinar. I'll sometimes refer to my notes, so please excuse me as well. The other thing I must tell you before we proceed is that we've got something special for you coming up at the end of the webinar, just before the question and answer. So we'll be letting you know about that towards the end. And also, if you have to leave early, or maybe you enjoyed being part of this webinar, we will be posting it on the switchedu.online website afterwards, so you can always refer back to it. So with that said, let me begin, and I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Melissa van der Westhuizen. She's a senior teacher, a curriculum designer, and she's also a Switch Saturdays maths tutor. And I'm just going to remind you about that. There are free Saturdays tutoring for students on Switch Edu, and we'll be covering that as well. Melissa is a forward-thinking and highly experienced school and online teacher, and she's also involved in a number of youth development programs. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Nicky. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Melissa. Welcome. Yes, it's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thank you. I'm excited.
Yes. And our next panelist is Mosedi Nkanyane. Mosedi is the founder and director of Axiom Private Tutoring Company. They service over 200 clients monthly in tutoring. So he's got a lot of experience with that. And he's a firm believer, like I think all of us, that young minds can be changed for the better through the right education. So welcome, Mosedi.
Thanks, Nikki. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here.
Good to have you as well. And last but not least, our third panelist is Pindile Chabangu. Pindile is a business coach and an incubator specialist, but perhaps more importantly, he's an online school parent. So his children started schooling online at the start of the lockdown last year in April. And I'm sure he's got a lot to share with us regarding the benefits, the pros and cons of being a parent of online learners. So welcome, Pindile.
Hi, Nikki. Thanks for the warm introduction, and hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to participating.
Good. Now, the other thing I must mention before we get on to our panelists is you will see polls coming up every now and again, and we'd really welcome your feedback on those polls. So, you know, it's a simple tick, so don't worry too much about that. But right now, we're going to move. As you see, there's the first question there. Are you currently online schooling your child? And so forth. And you'll just answer them as we go along. On this note, I would like to introduce our first panelist, who of course is Melissa. And Melissa, let's start with a question. Based on your online teaching experience, what have you found to be the key differences between online schools and bricks and mortar schools?
Thanks, Nikki. Okay, first, please forgive the teacher in me. I have to have my notes with me so that I don't miss anything. So with regards to the differences between online schooling and brick and mortar schools, I think that there's a lot of advantages that comes with online schooling that you don't really get in your brick and mortar schools. For example, from a parent's side, I think it is saving on fees and travel costs and uniform and food and those things. And when we look at the entrance requirements for online schooling and brick and mortar schools, it's actually quite the same. So there's not a lot of differences. I think for online schooling, it is more a thing of you have more involvement with your kids as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on more involvement. It's actually brought a quality of life to the family, back to the family in many ways, I think. And in terms of lesson delivery, I mean, I noticed as a parent that some schools use only videos, some schools have a mixture of videos with online classes. Sometimes it's just a WhatsApp or an email to the teacher. What are your experiences with that, Melissa?
So in my many different schools use different ways of delivering the lessons. So you get schools that chooses to only use live classes via Zoom or Google Meet or so on. And then you have schools where they combine it. They use like a hybrid system where you have your live online classes, and then also you have that interaction through chat systems like WhatsApp and email and learner management systems and so on. So it all depends on the actual school and then the learner need as well.
Yes, okay, good. And I suppose that's something to be explored. And in terms of the curriculum, are there changes? I touched on it, but you possibly have more experience with that.
Well, with the whole COVID situation that creeped up on us last year, I think you will find more and more online schools that actually caters for the CAPS curriculum or with the CAPS curriculum. Usually you only found schools that had more your Cambridge and the American curriculum and so on, like you said earlier on. But South Africa, with our CAPS curriculum, we're catching up. So there's a lot more schools that offer the CAPS curriculum.
Okay, good. And essentially it's really the same. It's just the mode of learning is slightly different, I suppose. And
Exactly.
in terms of scheduling, yes.
Sorry, yes. So with scheduling, timetables, those type of things, it basically works the same as your normal brick and mortar schools. You have your lessons in like any school, and those would be scheduled day to day and in certain, how can I say, periods as you had in school. So like Switch, for example, we do a day-to-day scheduling of the lessons, and it is a pre-scheduled weekly timetable for the classes.
Yes, and I suppose it's fulfilling those criteria per week or per subject, depending on what level they are at.
Yes.
Yes, and equipment required.
So the equipment for for you to actually participate in online schooling is, it's actually really basic, because you need some sort of a device where you can access the internet. So that would be a laptop, a tablet, those type of devices, and then also a stable and good internet connection. That's basically the only thing that you need.
Yes, and on that note, with our load shedding and that, I found it very valuable as a teacher. I bought myself last year a UPS, which basically keeps my my Wi-Fi going, and a power bank for my laptop, so that at least, regardless of what was happening, I could still continue teaching. And I found those actually valuable investments if I considered how much I was spending on data. So that's just something to consider. South African perspective with all our load shedding issues. How much teacher contacts do you find when you teach online?
Okay, so again, it all depends on the mode of the delivery of the classes. So whether you do the live or the hybrid or so on, but your teacher contact is there during class time. You also have contact electronically through email, through WhatsApp, through your management systems. So the learners have contact with that teacher, I would say, on a more regular basis than you would in a brick and mortar school, because in a brick and mortar school, you'll see your teacher in class and you can talk to them. Nowadays, you might WhatsApp, but it's not that often. Whereas an online school, you will literally have that electronic interaction on a continuous basis.
Yes, so it is good as well. And in terms of things like homework, I suppose it works the same. You have to, be accountable.
Oh, yes, definitely. Unfortunately for the kids, I don't think they can get away from the homework aspect, because like any other school, you will have to bring that home, for a lack of better words, the lesson that you learned. So you will definitely have your homework, which is done for an online school, for example. It is done on an online basis. So you will have that electronic submission of your homework and checking and so on.
Great. Now we spoke about equipment. What about textbooks? Are they additional? How are people working only with online information, or are you finding some systems have to still buy their textbooks?
So, excuse me. In my experience, some schools actually choose that they do the whole ebook thing. So you have a learner management system that incorporates the textbooks, and you have to then buy them separately, or if the school chooses, have it as part of a package. So that all depends on the different school that you use. So there's other schools that chooses for you to buy your textbooks online, have them delivered so that you have a hard copy book. It also can depend on the parent and the learner. For example, if I take myself, I love everything electronic, but I love to have a hard copy book next to me when I want to do my reading and that. So that's on a preference level, if I would say.
Yeah, and I found with my son as well, when he started, they did offer the online books, if you like, but he prefers the physical book because it really helps him to go through and so forth. And as you said, there's quite a lot of places that do deliver. You can order online. Exams and assessments, where do we stand with those?
Okay, so with exams and assessments, again, like any other school, you have to have your exams, especially when you look at the CAPS curriculum. There's certain tests, a certain amount of tests, your formal, informal, those type of things. So you will have your normal exam question papers, if I would say, but all of that will be delivered online as well. So I know some parents might be worried about, okay, but how do I now know that my child is not cheating? Or how do you know that the results are accurate? So online systems have evolved tremendously, and you actually have apps and systems built into the whole computerized test that acts as an online invigilator. So that would, for example, your child will be busy typing and it looks at the movement of the eyes, looking up for too long, and if you open up another browser tab and those type of things. So your online tests will work just like your normal hard copy tests. It's just digital.
And out of interest, because as you're speaking, I realized that my son was doing the Cambridge system, and when he was in the younger grades, he did tests at home online. But in the older grades, he has to go to a center. Does the same apply for CAPS?
So for the CAPS curriculum, especially when you look at your FET phase, they have certain requirements, and it is, what do you call it? The provincial papers, question papers that they need to write. So those, as far as I know, are not available online. So you will then have to go into an exam center and write your test there.
Yes, okay, great. We're talking about online schools. Do you know what system they use?
So are you referring to the learner management?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, it broke up a little bit there. So yes, learner management systems, or the acronym LMS, those are systems that's basically a digital portal for interaction between the school, the learner, and the parent. So that will keep a record. It's a personal portal, so it will keep a record of your child's academic records, calendar of events, so timetables, past recorded classes, those type of things. So these systems, there are many out there. Switch, for example, uses Cluster. You also have your D6 system, if I'm not mistaken, and Moodle. Those are the ones that I have dealt with.
Yes, but again, I suppose that's not something a parent has to worry too much about, as much as which school system you choose to use from that perspective. Yes, and at least it's a way of keeping account of what's going on. Cyberbullying. I mean, we all know that bullying happens in bricks and mortar schools. Have you had any experience with cyberbullying on the online education portals?
So in my experience, the cyberbullying in a brick and mortar school and an online school is basically the same, because in today's day, there's not a lot of kids that don't have access to the internet. So cyberbullying happens, but online school and a brick and mortar school, they handle cyberbullying in the same way. Your teachers are trained to be able to help the kids with the cyberbullying, and there's procedures according to the school's policy. There's procedures put in place to actually combat cyberbullying as well.
Okay, great. One more quick question, because we've got to move on. The regulatory body, and what is the relationship with the Department of Basic Education?
Okay, so with the regulatory body, the Department of Education supports e-learning. They already said that. And there's I think it is the grade R's to the grade 8s. They don't have to be registered with a regulatory body. It is the parents' responsibility to actually register the learners. So yeah.
Okay, great. Please, by the way, keep posting your questions so that we can come to them when we get to the question and answer section. And I see there are some questions coming through. Keep them coming. We'll definitely address them. Thank you so much. Quick one, Melissa. What advice would you give to someone thinking of pursuing online schooling for their children?
Okay, so I already touched quickly on the advantages and disadvantages. So it is very important for you to look at your child's needs and speak to them about it. So the advice that I would give you is to keep that constant interaction with your child, be involved in their learning, and choose an online school that will cater for you and your children's needs.
And I think you brought up a very important point, because there is a distinct difference between online schooling and homeschooling. If I had to think of homeschooling, I would like hold my hand in my head and go, oh no, what am I going to do when it comes to maths? But, online schooling is different, because everything is there to help your child work through it. Thank you so much for your contribution, Melissa. I'm sure we'll get back to you in the question and answer phase. Thank you very much.
Me.
I'd like to move on to Mosedi. Mosedi, from, of course, with a lot of experience in tutoring as a tutoring company owner. Mosedi, I'd like to start by asking you to just give us a little bit of insight into the role of tutoring and how it differs from that of teaching. And I think, Mosedi, is your mic and video on.
Yes. Thank you, Nikki.
There we are. Sure.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So I will probably start with the teaching first, because teaching comes first. So your teacher will introduce the new concept, that usually the learners doesn't know anything about the concept. And the teacher will work very hard to impart that knowledge, to the learner. And it's not always the case that the learner actually fully understand the topic. So that's where the tutor comes in. So the tutor will really fill in the gaps where the learner could not understand. Remember that with the teacher, the classroom setting is, it's a bigger group. And with the tutoring, it's smaller group or one-on-one basis. So the learner is able to dwell more on a topic without even thinking about delaying other learners, So tutoring is just about, academic support, to be able to support, and actually teacher and a tutor are supposed to work hand in hand, they complement each other. So none of them is more important than the other one. In some cases, we find that a tutor has to do the teacher's job, so which is not supposed to be, but you have to do that because you are as a tutor, you are finish up, you are trying to make sure that now the learner is able to get the marks at school. And I will actually use a common analogy that they use, that a tutor laid a foundation and start building the house, with bricks. Now the tutor on the other side will come and plaster the house, it just finish up in the house, and that actually being by deepening the learner's understanding and enriching their current knowledge base that the teacher has imparted. So that's the difference between the two.
So, so I imagine from what you're saying that you work quite closely as a tutoring company, or as tutors, you work quite closely with online schools. There's a relationship there. Is that correct?
Definitely, it is correct, because of supporting the learners that are coming all the way from the online schooling.
Yes.
So yes, so we definitely work closely together and support them.
Okay, that's interesting. Yes, and obviously you pivoted to 90% online tutoring. What is the efficacy of tutoring online versus face-to-face? Or is there a difference? Look, I'm talking to you face to face.
All right. So I nearly made an analogy with maths, but let me not do that. So there's definitely an advantage when it comes to online tutoring as opposed to face-to-face. When you are doing online tutoring, your lessons can be recorded. That means the learner can go back and listen again to the lessons, right? And in that way, the learner can be able to improve the marks, because remember, learners can be distracted in a class. And if this was a face-to-face, which this we don't have that luxury of recording the lessons. Yes. Now it means the learner has missed that concept. But now when it comes to online, it means the learner can be distracted. I mean, I'm not promoting that, but that can happen. But also the learner may not be in a good mood, or then something might have happened at home and whatever, whatever the case may be. But because the lessons are recorded, the learner may come back at a later stage and be able to listen to the lessons. Again, the learner may not be ready to actually understand the topic by that time. But at least if they recorded the lessons, when they listen again, they actually be able to understand the topic and be able to actually pass, which is quite important, the test or exam.
Yes.
So that's the first one. The second one would be less rescheduling. Woo! When it comes to rescheduling, I mean, I believe in consistent. Over 11 years that we have been tutoring, I've realized that the learners that consistently attend lessons 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week consistently do better than learners that will cancel the lessons. They will go on holiday. They are sick every now and then. They've got sports, so they're not going to be able to do the lessons. They don't have transport and so on. So I can see the difference in their performance. But now with online, it means now there's less rescheduling, especially with transport issues. It's quite late, it's raining, and so on and so forth, right? So it means now you can do lesson anytime. All is required is the learner to be available at the right environment. We don't need to have a transport for that learner. We don't need to have petrol to even come to the center or so on. So it means that that improved that consistency. And I've seen it since COVID, that there is now consistency of attending lessons or even locking in time, than somebody was stuck in traffic and so on and so forth. So that's is disadvantage over the face-to-face. Now the third one, which is now Nicky, you're gonna make me give people my top secrets. So the third one is matching the learner and the tutor. Now, we believe in not every tutor is for every student. So we try by all means to make sure that we match a perfect tutor with the perfect student, right? So that we can improve the efficiency. So the student is not bound to stick by the tutor that they cannot connect with, they cannot understand, doesn't speak to them, in the way that they will be able to improve their study skills. So now, this, when you're doing it online, it gives us more options, because I can match a tutor who is based in Durban with a student who is based in Cape Town.
Yes.
As long as it's a perfect match. But whereas if now they have to be at the same place, sometimes you have to find somebody who's available, as long as it's a good tutor, you see, because you have less options. So now matching the tutor and the students, perfectly can help to improve the marks, because remember, it's all about finding a perfect, method for the learner that can help them to actually improve their learning skills.
Yes. Now that's very valuable. It's a very good point. And just in closing, because I have to move on to our last panelist, what advice would you give someone thinking of pursuing online education for their kids? And have you noticed a change in learner behavior in terms of understanding what's being taught, learner behavior or development?
Sure. Awesome. I would definitely say good choice to actually continue considering following the online. But I would say, make sure that your child have got the correct technology to support the online learning, because that's quite important. That would include your reliable internet connection, laptop. It will be internet connection, laptop, ensuring that the learner is as effective, and we have the environment as well is conducive for studying,
Yes.
And this needs to be monitored by the parent, to just every now and then to make sure that the environment is conducive for studying, because you don't want learners to be studying and the TV is on and so forth. Now, I would definitely say, looking at what is actually happening now, seeing that companies are moving to actually do everything online, I would say to the parent that that's a good choice. Please pursue it, because it's going to prepare your child for a future workspace. Yes. And your last part was what development?
Yes. Have you seen a change? Have you seen a change?
Definitely, I've seen it. Yes, definitely, I've seen the change, because at the beginning, you are online. The learners thought that the online is just sending questions over WhatsApp and watching videos, and that's all, right? And that's why parents had negative when it comes to tutoring, and hence we had to give them free demos and see that, just to show them how can we use the online teaching in a proper way, right? So now, after they have interacted with us, we have seen a huge change in terms of their marks increasing, them leaning towards even wanting to do just online. Some of my students, they came to online not doubting online, and after that they refused to do face-to-face.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I think also it comes back to the fact that we're actually teaching our children an element of self-discipline and self-motivation, which can really serve them in future. Thank you so much for that, Mosedi. I must move on to Pandila. We probably are running a little bit over time, but you guys are giving us such valuable information that I find it important. Now, Pandila, my fellow parents of online education, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
what motivated you to choose this option as a parent? And how did the shift from bricks and mortar to online, how was it for you? And I think what's also relevant in that is like, how old are your children? My son was already a teenager when he started online.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the questions, Nikki, and hi again to everyone. I've been enriched already by listening to the other panelists. The motivation, I think you've touched on it. You spoke about COVID came along. And from our perspective, when COVID happened, you know, shift happened. So unlike yourself, who had the opportunity to explore it even long before COVID 3 years ago, from our side, the motivation was a real push. So last year when COVID hit, and the first phase, so we were phased into online. So let me state that up front. So we were not online from April last year, but in April, the normal bricks and mortar schools moved to what we commonly got to know as what a hybrid model. So the schools had no option but to go virtual and basically experiment how things were going. So that basically was the first kind of a move into that, where there was a hybrid, as I said, a mix between brick and mortar and virtual. Then earlier this year, then we had to relocate to another city, and you know, basically just before mid-year, and now all of a sudden, you know, if you do that during the course of the year, you have to find new schools, etc., and that can be a daunting task, as we see in the media from time to time. And just to also answer your other question in terms of my two kids, I've got two kids. One is 13 and the other one is turning 11 later this year. So as you can imagine, at primary school level to get into I think it provides better context in terms of, you know, looking at how then we moved on to online, the online option. So, you know, moving from a hybrid environment where now that was a good introduction to some kind of a virtual learning onto full online to where they are now. So that was sort of the motivation to say, look, they already had some virtual experience. So now they, instead of, you know, 40, 50%, let them move full on. So in brief, we did not choose the option chose us.
Yes.
and that's how we migrated to online. Yeah.
Yes, and it's been an evolution from what you're saying. And
exactly.
Could you just give a picture of what it's like in a typical day of learning for your kids, and what, you know, what's required from you as a parent?
So all right, so then I think Melissa kind of touched quite a bit on that in terms of, you know, a
Yes.
typical day looks like. So I think it's very much provided a good framework, because that's probably part of that anxiety I can imagine from looking at all the parents that are online today. That is it like a normal school, whatever normal school is to you, but it is a very much a normal school plan, and also that there's something that came up. I can't remember whether it was Melissa who touched on it or it was Museri, but this whole notion of, is online schooling equivalent to homeschooling? Because that's probably where some of the anxiety comes from. So the online school is not a homeschooling per se, but it follows a normal school sort of a day. You still have to keep them out of bed early enough so that they do the normal runs and so on. And then they got into a normal sort of a schooling days. Then as a parent, I mean, you still make sure that in the beginning, the setup, you are a lot more involved, but then it becomes minimal because the kids then are kind of have a very good normal class routine that they follow. Yeah. Was there another rejoinder question to that, I think?
Yes, and how much involvement as a parent are you, you know, I'm sure most parents think, like when I think of homeschooling, it's like, I can't, it would take too much of my time. Yes.
Yes, no, absolutely. So as I said then earlier, then it is not sort of a homeschooling. So you do set them up, and then they are all away or on it. And the plans, I think something that came out in your earlier questions. So from what I've seen personally is that because this is different from the bricks and mortar, there is the advantage that the online school goes an extra mile to ensure that as a parent you have a plan up front. So my wife and I are able to have a clear sense of what are the kids going to be sort of involved in for the term, for the month, and for the so for the term, the month, and also week to week. That is important to note, because it's separate from our experience. It's very different from the bricks and mortar, because personally I found that in the bricks and mortar you don't have quite a good feel of where exactly are your kids, whereas in the online school environment you are a lot more empowered to work with your kids. When I come back home from work, from office, I can keep my tabs a lot closer than a brick and mortar would. Yeah.
Absolutely, to monitor them. And of course, the one big question that I think always comes up, and that we've been affected, all of us have been affected through COVID, which is the social aspects. Did you find it tricky in the beginning? Have you found a way of resolving it?
Yeah, I think the last part of your comments, finding a way to resolve it, I think that's probably the trickiest by far. If you find the silver bullet, please do let us know. But seriously, the pandemic has disrupted our every aspect of our social lives, right? So in this case, it's not just even homeschooling, online schooling. So the pandemic came, and every aspect of our social life was disrupted. We are limited to socializing, even as parents, as you would know. So the online schooling system, what is there to support is the social clubs, the various social clubs that are there, from the chess clubs and esports and etc. So that allows to that initial interactions with other kids on that. However, what I would say to parents is you need then to start maximizing, what we've seen is to maximize the other social interactions. The kids already have some of the social, they are able to interact with other, social contacts, their cousins, their relatives, and so on. So that at this stage becomes a lot more beneficial. And what we also saw beneficial is that there are sort of a specialist sporting kind of clubs that are there that you should investigate as a parent. So for example, in Cape Town, they have Sporting Chance, which has ongoing sporting codes that you as a parent can consider and send your kids there. So you then, unlike in a normal brick and mortar, where you are spoiled for knowing that there's these 2 or 3 sporting codes, you've got to now pivot into really looking out and ensuring that your child is not left behind in that aspect. Yeah.
That's great. We're going to have to move on and have our question and answer session. But just touching on some of the pros, I mean, for me, one of the biggest pros was not driving in the traffic to school and back every single day. Have you found any other pros to online schooling?
Yes, I think, I mean, that's spot on. So yes, you're right. So the home run, every parent on here would, the school runs, etc. So that completely is out of the window, right? And the lunch boxes, etc. But let's talk first. Let me just touch on the direct cost. So my assessment really is that you're probably looking at least 70% you would be paying 70% on online of what you would have paid in school.
At the most 70% in my
At the most
experience.
70%, yes.
Yes.
I think 70% is sort of the touch point, right? So that's the first thing. I think from a cost point of view, I think that is a benefit. And then secondly, you spoke about stationery earlier, etc. You still need to invest, or you spoke about textbooks specifically. You still need to do some kind of investment in stationery. However, it's a different cost, because I don't know about some of the parents. At the beginning of the year, you buy 100% of the stationery. Halfway through the year, you then having to top up 50% again. Whereas with this, they're at home. Whatever is lost, they have to find at home. So you don't have that kind of loss. And then lastly, is the uniform issue. We've seen over the past few years, the uniform cost debate, etc. That is a direct benefit. Sometimes they just need to put their slippers on and go to school because school is just around the corner. So there's overall direct cost benefit, but like you said, the school run, etc., that is also a huge benefit. Yeah.
And just to wrap up on that, I found that the more and more of children that are doing online schooling are coming together. They might be schooling at different online centers, but they come together in the afternoons to socialize. So there's almost a return to the community and those within your community, if you like, which I think is also quite a nice evolution. We're going to have to move on to questions and answers, and I see that there's some amazing questions, and I'd really like all three panelists to please come in where you see fit. I might direct some of the questions to you, but now I had promised that we are going to offer you something very, very special. If you are interested in online education for your child, we are offering, and are you interested in joining through applying through switchedu.online, then Switch Edu is offering you a 30% discount on the first term of 2022, as long as you apply for this by the end of October 2021. You will get your 30% off the first term fees. Just go to the website switchedu.online and remember the promo code being webinar 2021. If you forget all of this, it will be on the Switched Edu online, and we hope that you do join and you get your 30% off the first term fees. That'll be amazing. So now we're going to move to questions and answers, and I see that some questions have come through, and I appreciate the feedback from everyone who's been asking questions. Also, just a reminder, if you joined us late, or if you've got a friend who wants to watch, or maybe you want to watch this again, this webinar will be up on the Switched Edu website, so you can watch it again and get the information or come back to the information. Thank you very much. And thanks also to whoever it was who wrote, Melissa, my son prefers your maths on Saturdays. So there you go. Switch Edu offers free maths to students on Saturdays, free tutoring to students on Saturdays, which you can also find information. Here's a question. I think it's from, I'm not sure who it's from. I think it's from Michelle. How do kids interact with other kids while doing online schooling? That's an interesting question. I mean, if it's a classroom, if it's a virtual classroom scenario, is there interaction between the children? And if it's not during the class, is there interaction with the children? Anyone who'd like to address that? Melissa, maybe you have some input for that?
Hi, Nikki. Yes, sure. So with the interaction of the parents, for example, I'd like to just first talk about that. So interaction with the parents, social or online events like this webinar, are actually arranged for the interaction between the parents. And you also do have your social media groups where the parents can interact. So whether that be a Facebook group, a WhatsApp group, or anything like that. So that is how your parents will interact with each other. Children interacting with each other and the social aspect of children in online schooling. We are actually, well, the parents have to drive that, because we all need to realize that the kids need that exercise and that interaction with other people outside of this box. So programs, for example, something I'm extremely passionate about, the President's Award, that actually helps the kids interact with other kids from all over and teaches them many different things to become world ready. As I saw in one of the questions, yes, it is. We need to realize that it's not only about education delivery as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, and just on that note, and I know you'd asked to clarify a question, but before we go there, on that note, do you have experience teaching a group of kids online, like in a classroom scenario? Is there interaction within the online classroom?
Yes, definitely. When you have a group of kids in front of you, like we have the group now, there's certain sections where you can do like little, what do you call them? It's like off-screen groups.
Breakaway groups.
Breakaway, sorry, I couldn't get the name. Yeah, breakaway groups where you can have little groups of kids interact with each other and then come back into the class. You can work together as a group. I had one lesson where we actually did an online maths game together, those type of things. So that interaction is definitely there and can happen.
Okay, great. Before I move on to the next question, Melissa, you said you'd like to clarify something about the regulatory body.
Yes.
That I spoke about earlier.
I'm so sorry. I actually wanted to clarify. There's two regulatory bodies called Sakai and IEB. So that is, the Sakai is the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institution, and IEB is the Independent Examinations Board. Now, online schools, if they cater for grades 1 to 9, they don't have to be registered with those bodies. But it is the parents' responsibility to register their child with their provincial Department of Education. So when you get to your FET phases, your grade 10s to 12, they have to write exams. So they have to be then registered with Sakai and IEB in order to write their exams. And then when your online school caters for your FET phase, that online school needs to be registered with them as well.
Okay, good. But it's really not that much effort on the parents' part, other than overseeing that it's been done or that the school is registered. Yes. Definitely. Okay, good. The next question I think I'm going to address to Pindile. Sofiso wrote in and said, as a parent, sorry about the thunder and lightning. Sofiso said, as a parent, are there any concerns that you've witnessed with your children that you may be concerned or would like to keep an ongoing eye on? Maybe you can answer that, Pindile.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, so I was actually about to type up an answer, so it's good you put me on the spot. I think the biggest concern is the amount of screen time. I think with online schooling, there's, you know, kids then become really excessively in terms of on the screen, not just for school, etc. So there needs to be that balance where as a child, in terms of keeping their eye, especially in the younger ages. So as parents, you individually, you need to, depending on your situation, you need to ensure that you put the necessary checks and balances in place, that it's not all, you know, online, because then it almost pivots to the other extreme. So that's sort of the one thing that, you know, sort of that stands out readily. But otherwise, the other concerns is is not in concerns about the children, but in terms of also the type of investments that you need to put the relevant infrastructure in place for your children to be able to be supported. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it really depends how we treat it as parents. I think when I was teaching at the Waldorf school, and there's this principle that it's a three-way thing. It's about the student at the top and the teacher and the parent, or the school and the parents at the same time. And all three must be working together. And I think
Absolutely.
it's not about just saying, here's the course, go and do it. This actually allows us to be closer to our children, which
absolutely.
Can be
I think I mentioned that point briefly earlier, and it's a good point that you're raising. I feel that with a bricks and mortar, that triangle that you're speaking about on the parental side, it's very it's kind of minimal. But with online schooling, I found that you really move towards a lot more parental involvement in your child's schooling than we previously experienced. Yeah.
Great. And the next question, Michelle says, can my son stay in school while doing online schooling? I'm not sure if anybody has got any feedback for that. I mean, my personal view is that's quite a lot, because online schooling is school itself. Any feedback from any of the panelists? What would you think? Yes, Melissa.
Hi. Okay, I can just give my opinion on that. What I have seen last year during, I was teaching at a brick and mortar school, and they decided to go in-class teaching as well as online teaching. And it was a lot for the kids. Like, they got really tired because they get double lessons, double homework, those type of things. So yes, they can, but I personally don't think it's good to have your child in a full online school and a full brick and mortar school, because then you're basically doing a double schooling.
I also find that in terms of hours, probably what would have taken 6 hours a day takes 3.5 to 4 hours a day at home. But it's a much more intensive way of studying. So when they're at school, it's mixed in with going outside to socialize and 20 people in the classroom. So it is, in a sense, more diluted, which kind of justifies the longer day. Whereas online schooling for me is much more of a kind of a streamlined way. And it might be a bit much. I hope that answers your question, Michelle, but maybe try it out and see how it goes. And then I see that Chidzani's written a few questions. Thanks, Chidzani. Says, great webinar. My questions are, how does online make up for people and social skills that children acquire from a physical platform? I hope we've covered some of those. How do parents network with other parents as provided by a physical platform? I think that was touched on a little bit earlier by Melissa and to an extent Spindile. And saying my question is not all about providing education to children. And I agree with you. Or can I alter that a bit and say education is not just about academics? I think our education is also about play, and it's also about interaction, and it's also about experiences that are not just academic. And just to move on, Chidzani says, my questions are also based on the fact that school is the closest environment to the workplace environment compared to other social settings for children. Any feedback on that from any one of you? I don't know what, Mosedi, maybe you've got an opinion on that?
I think just briefly from my side, I think the comment that school is the closest resemblance to work environment. My simple answer is that the world of work has changed and has changed forever. So what we've seen before and what we're seeing now, I think it was one of the panelists earlier who did say that an online environment actually does mimic what the world, the world of work. I think that's, by my experience at least, that's more an accurate reflection. because there's a lot more that the kids are learning in terms of how the world currently works that equips them for the world that we're going into. If it was 5 years ago, then I would agree with what has been raised. But because of the environment that we've been in and where the world is going, I think I would rather be more inclined to say online schooling is a better equiper for the future going forward. Yeah.
And I agree with you in that it's really taught my son self-discipline. It's really strengthened his ability to discipline, to schedule, and to do research and those kind of things. So it's been valuable. A couple of questions. I know we're running late, and I'm just going to remind you once again to the Saturdays free math on Switch Edu Online. And also, I think what I'm going to say relates to a question about being late. Rapu said, should I opt for online schooling in 2022? Am I too late to embark on this process? Not at all. And for you, Rapu, Switch Edu Online, if you choose to go with this school, are offering 30% off first term fees for next year. So the first term of 2022. And the special offer that Switch Edu is doing, this 30% off, just remember the promo code webinar 2021. Go to the website, put it in. You can do it anytime until the end of October 2021 to register your child for next year's online schooling. So you're definitely not too late. And I think that's another benefit of online schooling. Often we find we might move places, or we might be unhappy at the school we are. And this online education allows us literally to register anytime and to allow our students to start studying or slip into the system online. Rapu also said, I have 4 kids and 2 are in primary, grade 1 and 4. As a business person, would you recommend online schooling? Would I need to relook at my schedule so that I'm able to monitor them? Any feedback? Again, Mosedi, you might have something to add to that, or Pindile.
Thanks, Nikki. I think there are a couple of ways to be able to monitor that while you are still at work. Depending on whether your workplace as well is online or you are actually back to the office, you know. So depending also how old your kids are, because I mean, you need to, that's self-reliance that is taught as well, that they are able to log in at a certain time. But I think the online schooling as well can give you feedback if there are times that your child was not able to log in, you know. I think it's way better than actually the normal school, where actually you are at work, you're supposed to be at work in the morning, you still have to drop the kids and so on. You still have to make a plan that they are fetched at school after, you know, 2 or 3, while you are still supposed to be at work. So, and parents do make, you know, those arrangements. And you can make the arrangement, whether it's a cousin, if the child needs a bit of monitoring to make sure that they log in, you know, in time for the school. But otherwise, even if you're working at home, you don't need to monitor every lesson, otherwise you can't work.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And as also as Bendila said, it's about, you know, seeing what's happening, just monitoring on a daily basis, seeing if they're up to date, seeing if they've fulfilled their assignments, seeing if they're doing homework. It's the same applies with homework. You know, if you've got a spelling test tomorrow, you would sit with your children practicing for the spelling test. So I think in many ways it's the same. We have gone a little bit over time, and I thank you. In fact, I've been asked to say, as someone who's self-employed, did it affect me? And actually, I've loved it because it's allowed me to be closer to my son and to monitor him more closely, the fact that he's working at home. Obviously, he's a little bit older, so it's not that difficult for me anymore to go out and come back in. But I imagine that if you are going to your job every day and you've got younger children, there would have been somebody looking after them anyway. Please, Switch Edu's provided a checklist here for parents. If you feel like you're ready, you might want to just keep this as a checklist of how to move forward. You can scan the QR code with your phone, or on the chat that we had there, you'll see you can also download the checklist from the chat that's on the right. And don't forget, once again, the Saturday Switch Edu Saturday tutoring classes for maths are free. You can access that through the website. You can also go back and look at this webinar online, the free tutoring classes, Switch Saturdays Maths for grade 2 to 9. It'll be great if you do. Personally, I will not look back. I am so thankful I started my son in online schooling. It's freed me up. It's given him invaluable tools, I believe, moving forward into the world. And yes, there's a period of adjustment at the beginning. But it literally took a few weeks before we got into our rhythm of online schooling. So it might take a week or two to, get that rhythm going. But once you've got that rhythm going, there really is no looking back. I definitely would recommend it. I hope we've answered a lot of your questions today. Don't forget 30% off if you register with Switch Edu online before the end of October. And I'm sure on the website as well, your feedback is always welcome and invaluable. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to those of you who attended the webinar. And I must also say thank you to Peter and Fedi for putting it together. Hope to see you online schooling.